We're joined today on Primetime Local News with Zuhy and Raff Sayeed, local residents here from Lloydminster. And we're talking about the Queen. Obviously, Her late Majesty passed away, and both of you guys have a personal and family connection, not only to this monarch, but the Crown in general. So I guess we'll kind of start there, and I'll get both of you to share a little bit about your family connection to the British Crown.
My grandfather, Sir Muhammad Habibullah, was a very well-known person in India. He had, his reputation was huge, but he was asked and appointed by King George V to be on what they called then the Viceroy's Executive Council of India, meaning that the empire, of course, ruled India. And my grandfather was one of 7 people and 2 of them were Indian people. So he was one of 2 Indians who was on this Viceroy's Executive Council that ruled all of India.
Seven people ruled India.
Yeah, for several years.
And only 2 of them were actually
from
Indian
India.
origin.
Yeah. So we've grown up knowing that my grandfather was Sir Muhammad Habibullah. He was knighted by King George V, and then again given a higher honor than that knighthood, given an honor of the for India, the Star of India, was also given the Knight's Bachelor, given to very exalted people. Not very many people got this. So growing up with with the memory or the knowledge of my grandfather has been quite humbling. He went on after he finished at the Viceroy's Executive Council to be Prime Minister, Chief Minister in one of the kingdoms in southern India. And we've actually had an opportunity to meet that royal family as well.
That's incredible. Raff, I understand too, your mother was able to meet Queen Elizabeth II.
My mother was on the Board of Governors of a university, and she was there, the Queen was there, Her Majesty, the late Majesty was there in 1961 for the commemoration of the university's 125th anniversary. And my mother was the only woman on the Board of Governors. So the Queen met my mother and actually had a little interaction and says, "Are you the only woman on this board?" Because there was 12 men. And my mother said yes, and she says, tells my mother, and there's a picture to show that it was quite surprising that there was only one woman. And that was way back in '61.
And now fast forward a number of years, you two had the opportunity to meet Queen Elizabeth II, but I'll let you kind of get into that because I understand you got a call from the Prime Minister's office. I believe it was Prime Minister Mulrooney at the time, but you didn't almost believe it, right?
No, I thought it was a prank call. It came at 9:15 or so in the morning, and they invited us to Calgary to a reception at the Jackson Music Hall, which the Queen would be in attendance for. And so I asked for a couple of minutes, like I need some time to make this decision. So, and then I called Raff, and he was very involved in the Deputy Prime Minister's and our constituency.
Mr. Mazinkowski.
Yes.
And so I called his office. They confirmed with the Prime Minister's office that yes, we were on the guest list, and they got back to us. And somebody from the Prime Minister's office called us, and I happened to mention to them that we have some history that the Queen would be interested in knowing. So
because when they invited you to meet the Queen, it wasn't because they knew this family history, it was just your community involvement. So you were able to share the backstory with the Prime Minister's office.
Exactly. Right? So then I said the Queen would be, we have a history to share with the Queen. And they said, what would that? So I explained exactly what Zuhy had told you earlier, and my history, my mother's history, and they said, we'll get back to you. And I remember I was doing my hospital rounds in the morning. We got a call back within 15 minutes saying, the palace says the Queen would like to meet you, and we'll make arrangements for you to meet the Queen, have a separate meeting at the hall, the concert hall.
So let's fast forward to that moment then. You were at that concert hall, able to meet the Queen? Kind of talk us through what that was like.
Well, the security detail had explained to us exactly where we needed to be and how this would happen. They met us when we arrived and led us into the concert, but before that, they showed us exactly where we need to be standing and that the Queen and the Prime Minister would be briefed to come to us.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about the concert. It was completely overwhelming to know what was coming next. But it was quite the feeling. It was quite the feeling that in this crowd of people at the Jackson Hall, at the concert hall, that the Queen was coming to meet us. Regardless of how many times I told myself, you know, she's a person, she's a lady, she's a woman.
We told ourselves both,
terrified.
she's just a lady, so let's not get too worried. Anyway,
But
she was
there's
coming.
still that pressure.
Oh.
Hey?
She was coming down the pathway, and it so happened that she was looking for us, and she was looking across the way where we were standing and looking at her. At which point, the Prime Minister's bodyguard told the Prime Minister, the people she's looking for are right across. So she made her about face her and came straight to us.
Right to you guys.
Right to us. And at that point, I choked. I choked, and then Zuhy talked to her first.
Yeah, they had told us that she wouldn't shake hands, but as you can see from the pictures, that's the first thing she did.
Wow.
And she was, Her Majesty
gracious.
was so gracious, so personal. She said right away, as she shook my hand, she said, it's a pleasure to reacquaint myself with your family.
Wow.
And I didn't think I had any words, but I was probably, you know, quite polite in my response and said that we were absolutely thrilled too. And we said we'd brought my grandfather's medal with us, and she wanted to look at it. And she looked at it, and she was just, you could see on her face that she was really touched. This was something not just deeply personal with her grandfather, but also very much part of the empire, so to speak.
Yeah.
And regardless of all of the stories we hear about the empire and being a colony of the empire, India has a really rich history with the British. And it was really a moment that I would not forget. I'd followed her closely before, continued to follow her much more after that, but then got really interested in who my grandfather was, because this was obviously something that even she had deep respect for.
And you wanted to dig a little bit into that history.
We did.
Then I took the photograph I had with me, which is
And we
displayed
couldn't take
there,
any metal frame, anything.
and I showed her the photograph, and she immediately remembered where it was and the year.
From
and
when
she
she
said,
met your mother.
well, my mother,
Yeah.
she says Madras in 1961. She remembered.
Wow.
And what a phenomenal memory she had.
Yeah.
And so then we talked about it, and I said, you recall, you remarked that she was the only woman. She said, yes, I do recall that. She was the only woman.
And so when she was meeting you, it wasn't like she was just going through the motions. She genuinely cared about the stories that you had to share with her and the
Yes.
history
Yes.
that you had with her
Yes.
family.
She
Absolutely.
seemed interested because, as you can see, she was curious and looking at the photograph in one of those photographs, how curious she was looking at the picture. And then she walked away after and then she came back. She walked
She
about
came
10
back to speak
she
with
walked
you.
10 steps. Then she made an about face, came back, and said, with a quizzical look, "You live here?"
You both
And,
live here?
and we said, yes, we both do. We live in the Deputy Prime Minister's constituency, and it's a great country. We live in Canada, it's a great country. And at that point, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney said, thank you, in his deep, booming voice, because, he needed somebody to boost him. At that time, his
You had
political
met him
fortunes were
before
low.
too, yeah.
And so after the fact, people were coming to you and asking,
yes,
why
because
did she
we
come
were
back,
we
right?
Yeah,
were
who are you?
we were separated in a area of the reception hall. So as soon as we weren't taken away. So as soon as people saw the Queen approaching us, they came closer, and we actually had been. We asked if we could take two really close friends with us. So we had Henry and Carol Wilson with us. Henry's in the photograph as well. And then others came pressing by. And once the Queen left, who are you? Why did the Queen want to meet you? And we just said we had family connection, because like I've said to you before, we don't usually talk about our personal and private
And
lives.
there's a lot
It's
of
just-
details to get in with this story as well, right?
Yes.
It's a long story. We
yes.
just said we were invited by the Prime Minister's
Yeah,
office.
we
And
did
kept it at
But,
that.
We
but
kept
you know,
it at
they
that.
kept pressing, why did she come back and talk to you again?
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal, right?
It's a big deal.
I mean, that's a big, and that shows how simple she was, that she would go away and then come back and ask the question, you
She
know.
was-
I mean, she was a very ordinary, gracious, lovely lady.
Yeah,
was
she
truly,
really was.
truly great.
Yeah.
You know, to be humble is great, and she was truly great.
Now we're running a little short on time, but I do want to ask, now that she's passed, I'll give you guys the opportunity to just reflect on what do you think Queen Elizabeth II's legacy will be?
Her legacy will be one of actually bringing the countries that were under the empire rule together. Her legacy of starting the Commonwealth, her legacy of being a queen of the people, not for the people, but of the people. Her graciousness, her strength that she didn't publicly proclaim, but you could see that she held it in her. And just that graciousness of melding the British monarchy and being in Canada's queen just became, it was just part of who she was.
Yeah.
There was nothing separate or haughty or separate, nothing. It was just, it was who she was.
She brought the common touch.
Yeah.
She was not imperious. Her legacy will be that she was a simple woman who happened to be queen. And I would say that was what's most appealing to the common person, which is why we're seeing the crowds we're seeing right now.
Yeah, the reaction
Yeah,
that we're seeing
absolutely.
today.
And I mean, like one of her predecessors who was known as the haughty queen, Our Late Majesty was just absolutely phenomenal in her way of being with people. I also had the opportunity of meeting Princess Anne, and even when you see a picture of Princess Anne, these recent pictures show great emotion on her face. But she too, obviously raised by Her Majesty, was extremely, extremely friendly and gracious. So it's these highlights have sort of been very personal because our families and my grandfather go back so long.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming in here today to talk with us and to share your story. I understand you said it before, this isn't something that you do lightly. And on this occasion of Her Late Majesty's passing, I want to say thanks again for sharing these intimate details with us, and I really appreciated this discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.